not too far away, Bill Binney in Maryland. And they were having an interesting chat when we lost, unfortunately, our connections in various parts of the world. So we apologize for that. We're now under part 2 in a different URL, which I'm right now trying to post on Consortium News. So if Bill and Cassandra could ad-lib a little bit, I'd love it right now. And Bill has to unmute himself, however.
Sorry.
What were you guys talking about before?
She's going insane right now. Yeah, sorry.
What were you talking about?
I remember what we were talking about.
Well, what was going on outside, the weird people outside the embassy?
Yeah.
And the mass incarceration that Bill was asking.
We thought
Let's say if I say that again, if we lose the line, then we know for sure that was something fishy.
Yeah.
Bill was talking about Attorney General-elect or nominee William Barr had written a book some years ago, Bill pointed out, about mass incarceration in the United States. And Bill recommends that if he becomes Attorney General, that he indeed carries out that mass incarceration, but not of the public, but what he calls the country. In other words, certain people who make decisions in this country. Isn't that right, Bill?
Yeah, most of them within the beltway around D.C., yes.
I'm just
a lot
inside.
Of them go home, a lot of them go back home to hear from their constituents, but yeah, they need to be looked at and exposed for what they're doing. Like, for example, some of them, it's from the Snowden material, it's pretty clear. If you look just at something called a Fairview program, you could see the tap points on the fiber network all throughout the United States, not just along the coast where they get the foreigners, but right across the country where they get all the U.S. citizens. Well, I mean, even Representative Gowdy when he was on TV with me, he followed me once and said he didn't believe, or his understanding of the collection was that it wasn't against U.S. citizens. Well, but he's not asking he's not asking the question about what are they collecting in Milwaukee or in Nashville, Tennessee, or Dallas, Texas. What are you collecting there? It's not foreigners. The foreigners are on where the transoceanic cable surface. That's on the coast. If you're there, which they are, then they get all the foreigners. Well, what are you doing inside the country then? Well, you're collecting U.S. citizens, and it makes it clear that everything they've been saying about that is a lie. And so they don't ask those questions, because then there wouldn't have this plausible deniability and make it look like they're conforming with the law and the Constitution, which they're not. That was what we were talking about, basically.
Yeah.
And that's why we need this investigation of everybody within the DC Beltway. And also, if they're not there currently, they're at home when they come back, investigate them, get them in to testify.
Well, there are a lot of
when did you know it?
There are some innocent people living inside the Beltway, including myself. It's only about a mile or two south of me, but I'm inside it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously, we're joking, right? We're joking, Bill, and Bill was joking before.
Well, look at the U.S. government did that after in World War II with the Japanese, right?
So we should do it with the members of Congress, members of Congress, and about 2,000 people in the agencies going down to a certain level of management that are, in your view, responsible. That would lead. That would be an enormous feeling of freedom in the country that would go across the land. But how long would it last until other people took over those positions? And
I had a solution to that too. I had a solution to this. Who takes over?
Okay, let's hear it.
It's all a part of the Article 5 of the Constitution. We have a separate states constitutional convention with no one from D.C. And we changed the convention by having 75% of the states represented, which we could do, and ratify it at the same time. And then we implement it by saying, here's how we're electing people who can take positions in government in D.C. And we do it by basically a random selection from the voter lists. And I'll write the algorithm if you want, but just do it randomly and have just random people go in for these positions and not have that. Look at the benefits. We'd have a bunch of people who want to balance a budget. We don't have that now. We'd have a bunch of people who don't like wars and wouldn't want to get in because their sons and daughters would have to fight it. Now, we don't have that now. We get a bunch of people who would want to work together to solve a problem. We certainly don't have that now. We get rid of all the political parties and all the crap that goes with them, all the lobbying, all that would end. I mean, look at all the benefits. So I think it's never changing how we get people in D.C., get rid of the elections and all that, all at once. One fell swoop, we're cleansing our government.
Is there any way we can get Trump to nominate you for Attorney General instead? Because I don't see it happening otherwise.
I mean, I would have followed the law right away. Anybody who violated the law, you'd get an indictment on them. Submit them for the grand jury for an indictment. I mean, that's what you do. You follow the law or you don't. Right now, we don't. I mean, except those who are part of the Department of Justice don't get looked at for the law. Everybody else does.
And then you'd have some. You might have certain visitors. You might have certain visitors to your house again and be surprised as you're exiting the shower.
That's all right. I'm backed up 9 ways to Sunday in 4 different countries. I don't keep everything inside the United States because I keep it outside the jurisdiction of the United States also. So I'm backed up over there.
Okay, you're on. We're live being broadcast right now, so I just want to remind you of that.
I know you're taping, right?
No, we're broadcasting again.
Oh, we are. Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah. So that just
good.
Went out.
I want them to know everything I have to say. I encrypt absolutely nothing. I encrypt absolutely nothing because I want them to know everything I think and say.
So far, they do anyway. They do anyway because of the tap that they have on your phone. You said the lousy tap, so they do know everything.
Yeah, sure.
You're thinking and saying.
No, I want them to. I want them to know everything I think of them. After all, I've got evidence of malicious prosecution on their part. That's why they've left us alone.
Yeah. Bill's referring, of course, to a long case in which he and a few other members of the NSA were never formally arrested, as far as I understand, were intimidated by FBI showing up at their homes because all over basically a program that they'd favored that the NSA did not want, and they wanted a more expensive one that didn't work as well. And they made a complaint to the Inspector General, right, at the Pentagon.
That was our duty to do that.
The NSA, your duty to do that.
Yeah.
That was the way they responded. Send the FBI. Now, if we get, we've been talking about, sorry?
Yeah, but also they tried to indict us 3 separate times. Each time I had the exculpatory data on that because they thought they took it all, but, I share everything, so I got it back rather quickly, like the next day. And then the final time, the third time, that they told our lawyer, we had a lawyer at the time, Kirk Wiebe and I, and he told us that the prosecuting attorney at the Department of Justice had told him that they were about to indict us. They were coming after us. So I had all this evidence of exculpatory evidence and actually evidence to contradict what they were saying, which meant that they were maliciously attempting to prosecute us. That's a felony also. And so I told them directly through a tap that the FBI had on Tom Drake, which I knew he had. So I told them over the phone all the evidence I had on the FBI and the Department of Justice, and all that the material that could prove malicious prosecution on their part. And I said, Tom, tell your lawyer that when we go to court for this, we're going to charge them with that and give the evidence to the court. Well, after that, I never heard anything again from them except to get a letter of immunity from them. A month later, unsolicited. I know our lawyer didn't understand what happened. I never told him that I was threatening them separately. And so he never knew that. But it just shows you what kind of cowards they are. That's all. They're just cowards. They'll try to do everything they can in secret. And as long as they can get away with it, they'll do it. When you challenge them in the open, they run.
Shows you what kind of country we're living in now as well.
Yeah.
Right. They will send law enforcement against senior officials of the National Security Agency because you complained about something, which, as you said, was your duty to do.
Yes. It's written in the regulations.
It's the country that wants to take a journalist from his refuge in an embassy in London and put him in a courtroom here in Alexandria where he's never going to get a fair trial.
Well, it's the same. It's like silencing the truth. Now, the problem is that these truths coming forward show problems with government and problems with the things in the government. And if they don't ever face them or address them, they'll never fix them. And so they'll just keep perpetually festering and corrupting government all along and never change. So, I mean, it's like an alcoholic. If you can't see that you're an alcoholic or admit it, you can't fix it. Well, right. That's what they're doing by doing this, by silencing people and stepping on them and stuff like that. That's avoiding the issue and not admitting you have a problem and don't face it. And so you never fix it.
You say they're cowards, but I think they're legitimately fearful of the public rebelling against them when the public is given the information about what these guys and some women are really doing in positions of power. And that's WikiLeaks. Yeah. That's why it's like they're doing the job journalism is supposed to be doing. If journalism had been doing its job all along, we'd be up in a situation we may have never had a need for WikiLeaks either, because government officials could go to a trustworthy reporter and who has editors who are going to back him, and they would publish this stuff. It's happened from time to time, but the media has become so corrupt in the service of the state rather than the public that WikiLeaks became necessary, and that's why we're talking here tonight. Yeah, to defend the guy who started it and who they want to prosecute.
But actually, for decades, the CIA has been infiltrating and trying to infiltrate media all along. They've been doing that for decades. Casey was one who said that when you know that when you find out that 70% of what's being believed by the people in the country and talked about in media, you'll know that we've succeeded. So he's saying basically when we can get everybody to believe something that's false, we've got control of them. That's what I testified to the Bundestag and to the House of Lords in the UK. Is that this whole program is nothing more than how their government is trying to take over and have population control of everybody. I mean, that's why I also said that, and when Reagan was president, he said we're a country with a government. Now I say we're a government with a country. That's what our government has become.
Absolutely. I've heard that Casey quote before, Bill. Do you know in what context Casey said that? Was that off the cuff or in a memoir, or how did that ever get out that he said something so frank as that? You know?
No, I don't. I don't know, but I do
because
know
it sums it up pretty well right there.
Yeah.
And we've got sycophantic journalists who are living through. They like to be close to power instead of close to the people, serving the public. So
we're just finding out what the truth is. That's all. I mean, I look at it just finding the truth. I mean, that's certainly something we got from Julian, but not something we get from any very, very few other people.
That's the problem, isn't it? That is the issue right there, that they're protecting. And of course, when government officials talk about freedom of the press and protecting journalists and community, even organizations like they Assange doesn't protect them, they are not going to protect. They want to prosecute.
Yeah.
We've come to a very chilling moment in American history, really. And not that we haven't been here before. We had the first Cold War and the first McCarthyism. There have been other, going back to witch hunts in Puritan days, which is why the playwright Miller compared McCarthyism to the witch hunts of the Puritan days in The Crucible, his play The Crucible. So we've got this moment again. It seems to ebb and flow, but this with the technology that has grown, it's much more ferociously. They have much more ability to control us than they did in the first McCarthyist period.
Yeah, I basically agreed with Diane Rourke, and when she said that this is probably the the greatest threat to our republic since the Civil War.
And we don't even know it, and most people don't even know it. That's how successful what Casey's saying.
That's exactly right.
Doesn't even know.
Right. In fact, I would point to Tom Drake. I would point to Tom Drake when he was visiting or over for a conference in Germany, and he told me that after the talk that he gave there, he was approached by an elderly German couple, and they told him, they said, we are an ex-fascist state, and we know it. And you're a pre-fascist state, and you don't know it. that also captures it.
That's a very successful job on the part of people in power to keep the people who they're controlling from even understanding that there's control. Right. But I think there is some understanding. Cassandra, you could jump in, of course, anytime. That there is an understanding amongst people across the land that things aren't right. There's something wrong in this country. People don't feel free, and of course, beside the economic pain that's being inflicted by 30 years of this new laissez-faire, where the government is taken out, no regulation, deregulation, ending welfare programs, just transferring wealth from the people to the 1%. So there's anger growing across the United States. There is certainly anger in France.
Across the world, I think.
Better tradition in France of showing that anger that we do here. And that's why I think rulers are scared, and they're moving. They got to silence somebody like Julian Assange. They've got to silence WikiLeaks because he's putting out, opening people's eyes.
And that's why they're going after whistleblowers too. Don't forget the whistleblowers.
Oh, I won't. Yeah. But with their own words, by the way, because it's the documents that are being published or the documents from governments. They're hanging themselves. They're being hung by their own words through the agency of WikiLeaks and the whistleblowers who risk their lives and their freedom absolutely to do that. And that's a huge, huge step to take, as you know, as any whistleblower knows. Someone who's not been a whistleblower can't fully understand. It's not just losing your job, too, when you're dealing with things like the National Security Agency or the CIA. We're talking about losing potentially your freedom, as we saw happen to Chelsea Manning, of course, and to John Kiriakau. The only person who went to jail for related CIA torturing was the man who revealed it.
What's that tell you about our country? Instead of putting people who commit, the crimes of torture, instead of putting them in jail, we put the fellow who exposes them in jail.
Tells you a lot.
Torturers immunity. We give them immunity.
Well, we got to move forward. We want to look forward, don't we, Bill? That's what Obama said. We don't want to look back at the
crimes of the last administration. But again, if you can't look back, you can't recognize what you are and what problems you have, and you can't fix them. That's the point. So unless you hold people accountable, you can't fix anything.
Oh, absolutely. But maybe they do recognize who they are, and they don't want the following administration to look back on their crimes. So they want to have carte blanche to do what they need to do. And the bigger example than even Kiriakau's is Manning, because she revealed war crimes, as you said earlier in this broadcast.
That's
and
right.
then who went to jail? The pilots, the commanding officers, the people responsible for those war crimes that you could see in black and white, literally. No, the person who revealed them.
And also all those people involved in that stuff are the ones making all the money for this military-industrial complex and so on. And so that's why I called it the happiness management program.
When it comes down to, it always comes down to money in America, it seems like, doesn't it? That is the bottom line. Business of America. Well, Bill, we've got 10 minutes left. We were hoping that Cynthia McKinney would join us from Bangladesh, but I don't know if that's happened and if that will happen. So I think we might end the broadcast early, if that's okay with our technical people. If it doesn't seem like Cynthia's coming in, and I think maybe Bill and I are all talked out. What do you think, Bill? You have anything else to add?
Well, let's see. Oh, sure. All the people in the Department of Justice, including Mueller, who used the NSA collected data for common crime inside the United States, looking at content and metadata, investigating for common crime, and they go use that as the basis for arresting them inside the country. This is for common crime, like drug smuggling or drug pushing, stuff like that. And then they take them to court, and they have to do a parallel construction because the NSA data is not admissible in the court. So then they do a parallel construction and say that's the data that they used to arrest them when it was false. That's perjury. So they're perjuring themselves in court and fabricating data, evidence against them. Instead of using them, denying them also the use of violating the Fifth Amendment of testifying against yourself, and violating the Sixth Amendment, not allowing them due process to challenge discovery of data used against them in the court of law, in the criminal court. So, and then having Feinstein sit up there when Senator Feinstein, when she was trying to assert the value of the program, the domestic spying program, Stellar Wind, she said that they had used it to put hundreds of people in jail every year. Well, I mean, it's thousands of people in jail since 2001 who've been put there by perjury by the U.S. government. And this is policy of the Department of Justice and the Drug Enforcement Administration and the FBI, that when you do this, you can't file any paperwork or any affidavits and mentioning it in the court of law. You have to do this parallel construction and hide the real source of the information that you use to arrest people. This is the fundamental destruction of our entire judicial system. Not only that, it spreads around the world through the Mutual Law Enforcement Act Treaty, through the embassy representatives, where they pass this kind of information around the world to collaborating policing organizations, like everybody in the world cooperating with the FBI or the DEA. They're eligible to get this information too, but not the data. They can't give them the NSA collection. They can just tell them what to do at a certain time, where to go, who to arrest, things like that. So it's destroying democracy around the world, really.
Now, how many instances or cases do you know of where that parallel construction was actually employed? Is it widespread or a number of cases?
Yeah, it is. Yes, I mean, they used it against the Tea Party. They used it against different people. The Occupy group. They used it against Elliot Spitzer. The Jim Rosen, the Associated Press. They used it against us whistleblowers. So it's not just that, but when you get into these hundreds of people every year being put in jail with this information for common crime inside the United States, they're not terrorists. Right? Not foreigners. These are U.S. people because from the collection through the Stellar Wind program, the domestic collection inside the United States of domestic communications. I mean, how else can the analysts at NSA do love intelligence? Look into the data to see if their lovers who are local, I would point out, are actually cheating on them with other people who are also local. So that means that they're looking at local to local communications. That's inside the United States.
And presumably supposed to be illegal.
Well, it is.
It's illegal. And what also is illegal, you very well explained, is that you cannot take NSA data about local people and use it in a criminal case. But they've found a way around that, haven't they?
It's parallel construction. Yeah. By the way, Ray McGovern asked Mueller after one of his talks whether or not he had a problem with parallel construction. And Mueller said, absolutely not. That's because Mueller, in his statements that he made to Bart Gellman, his interview with him in 2011, it got published in Time magazine, or not? Time magazine, I believe it was. It was he and the FBI had been using the Stellar Wind program since 2001. Well, that means that he'd been doing these prosecutions and arresting people since that period of time, using the domestic collection done by NSA.
It's a very optimistic way to end our show tonight. So I'm going to say a few words. Thank you, Bill.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ray McGovern. Thank you, David Swanson. Thank you, Brian Becker. Thank you, Cassandra Fairbanks. Kathy Vaughan, who just came back online again. And yes.
I just want to interrupt you because I heard that Susie Dawson.
I was just about to do that, Kathy.
Oh, great. Don't worry. Oh, I don't want to miss that one.
Just thanking everybody. And I was now going to give a plug to an article by Susie Dawson, who's started these vigils and has done such a tremendous job building this up. And I'm really pleased and honored in a way that she asked me to carry on what she started. She's written an article that is going to be published within about an hour or so after this program ends, which is 5 minutes from now. That will be appearing on Consortium News. It's become an exclusive to Consortium News. It is new evidence from WikiLeaks publications that show, I'm not going to give it away, I'm only going to tease it, but it shows some way that New Zealand has been working in the Five Eyes system, Britain, Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, the five Anglo-Saxon countries, how they share intelligence, mostly for the benefit of the United States, of course. She has new revelations about how New Zealand human intelligence was used to help the United States in a third country. That's all I'm going to say right now. Not in New Zealand, not in the U.S., but in a third country, not one of the Five Eyes, by the way. So a non-Five Eye country was spied on for the benefit of the United States by New Zealand intelligence agents. And that's all I'm going to say. Oh yeah, there's Ed Snowden revelations too. I'm reminded, not just WikiLeaks. Let Ed get away. Can't let Ed not get his credit. But anyway, you'll read the article, you'll see all that. So it just has to be set up for publication, and hopefully by about 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the U.S., it'll be published on Consortium News. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight to everyone. Thank you for tuning in and watch our broadcast. Sorry again about the technical problem when we lost our stream for a little while there. But we finished it with a flourish, I think, with Bill. And I thank you. And I thank everyone else who came on board.
Right. Yeah, thanks. Right. Good night.
Bye-bye, Bill.
Bye-bye.
I am stumbling underground.